Sometimes revenge doesn't start with anger. It starts with silence and pain so deep that it becomes your only language. This is the story of Ariana Cole, a young woman born into the kind of wealth people only dream about. Her father, Richard Cole, was a respected real estate mogul in Chicago, owner of the Cole Legacy Group, a billion-dollar empire built from nothing but grit and genius. He was known as a man with vision, kindness, and most of all, love for his only daughter. Ariana was his world, until she came. The stepmother. Her name was Vivian Crossgold, beautiful, elegant, manipulative. To the public, she was the perfect socialite, the woman who completed the picture of success, but behind closed doors she was venom wrapped in silk. When Richard met Vivian, Ariana was only 15, quiet, intelligent, and still grieving her mother's death. Vivian saw the girl as a threat to her future, a threat to the fortune she planned to control. Richard believed Vivian brought joy back into his life. He didn't see the darkness behind her smile. But Ariana did. From day one, Vivian's subtle cruelty began small, forgetfulness of Ariana's birthday, replacing her late mother's portrait with her own, whispering to Richard that Ariana needed discipline. And Richard, blinded by love, thought Vivian was right. He thought his wife was helping him raise a strong young woman. But the truth, Vivian was building a prison, one made not of bars but isolation. The hidden plan. Vivian's real goal was control. She wanted every share, every dollar, every ounce of power Richard held. But to get it, she had to do one thing: remove both obstacles in her path, Richard and Ariana. Her first move was deception. She convinced Richard to make her the co-trustee of his estate, saying it was just for legal efficiency. Then she started poisoning him slowly. Nothing dramatic, nothing traceable, just a little at a time, hidden in his medication disguised as care. Ariana noticed her father's health decline rapidly over months, his trembling hands, sudden confusion, fatigue. She begged him to see a specialist. Vivian brushed it off. "Your father just works too hard, dear," she'd say, smiling sweetly. But behind that smile, she was counting the days. The night of the murder. It was a Thursday night in December. The house glittered with Christmas lights, soft music echoed from the grand piano, and the snow outside fell quietly, a picture-perfect evening. Ariana remembered every detail of that night for the rest of her life. Her father was in his study, coughing, shivering. She brought him tea, but Vivian stopped her in the hallway. "Go to your room, Ariana. Your father needs rest." "But I said go." Something in Vivian's eyes made Ariana step back. She left, but she didn't sleep. Hours later, she heard noises, muffled voices, a crash, then silence. She ran downstairs and found her father collapsed on the floor, his eyes open, his lips blue. Vivian was kneeling beside him, sobbing or pretending to. When Ariana screamed for help, Vivian whispered, "It's over, darling, he's gone." But her eyes were dry as dust. The funeral of lies. The funeral was broadcast on every major Chicago channel. Cameras, reporters, and endless flowers. Vivian wore black lace and crocodile tears. She delivered a speech that made everyone cry about love, loss, and the man she adored. But Ariana stood there numb. She knew the truth. She knew Vivian killed him. When she told the family lawyer, he looked uncomfortable. "Ariana, I know this is hard," he said gently, "but the medical report says cardiac arrest." Vivian had covered every trace. Then came the reading of the will and the second death for Ariana. The inheritance trap. Richard's updated will shocked everyone. Vivian was named executor and majority heir of the estate. Ariana would receive only a small trust, locked until she turned 30, and only accessible if she remained in Vivian's guardianship until then. Vivian had made sure of that. She owned the lawyer, manipulated the documents, and ensured the young woman had nothing but her mercy to live on. From that day, Ariana's life turned into a nightmare. Years of punishment. Vivian made sure Ariana paid for being her father's daughter. She took away her phone, her credit cards, even her car. She pulled her out of college, claiming Ariana wasn't emotionally ready. Ariana became the unpaid servant of her own home. cooking, cleaning, doing errands, while Vivian and her own son, Ethan, lived like royalty. Ethan, 3 years older, was a spoiled brat, arrogant, entitled, and cruel just like his mother. He would smirk as Ariana carried groceries or washed dishes, sometimes whispering, "You should thank Mom. If it were up to me, you'd be out on the streets." Ariana never replied. She just lowered her head and stayed silent, because silence, she knew, was her only weapon for now. The breaking point. On her 21st birthday, Ariana received no cake, no card, only humiliation. Vivian called her to the living room, surrounded by friends and lawyers. "Ariana," she said, her voice sugar-sweet, "it's time you start contributing to this family. I've arranged a position for you as an assistant in one of our cleaning companies." Everyone laughed. Ariana stood frozen. The daughter of Richard Cole, once the heiress to a billion-dollar legacy, reduced to a janitor under her stepmother's name. It was the moment her pain finally hardened into purpose. That night she packed a small bag and left. No note, no tears. Just the quiet promise that one day Vivian would pay. The hidden years. For 5 long years, no one heard from Ariana. Vivian told everyone she'd gone rogue, that she was ungrateful and mentally unstable. The media moved on. Ethan inherited his stepfather's company shares. Vivian became a respected CEO, cold, powerful, and feared. But miles away, Ariana wasn't broken. She was becoming something else. She took night jobs, lived cheap, studied finance, business, and law under an alias. She worked her way through scholarships and quietly built her own online investment brand. Every penny she earned went into one goal: to take back what was stolen. And she was patient, painfully patient. The ghost returns. 5 years later, Chicago's elite woke up to a shock. A new company was rising fast, Ravencrest Holdings, led by an anonymous CEO known only as A. Cole. Vivian laughed when she saw it on the news. "Another small fish trying to swim in my ocean," she sneered. But that small fish was her stepdaughter, grown, sharpened, and dangerous. The spark of revenge. One night while attending a charity gala, Vivian froze when she saw a familiar face across the hall, confident, elegant, dressed in black silk, eyes cold as winter. Ariana. Alive, successful, unbent. When their eyes met, the world seemed to stop. Vivian's smile cracked. Ariana smiled back, slow, calm, terrifying. That was the moment Vivian realized. The ghost of the girl she destroyed had come back for her. 5 years can change everything: the world, a city, and even a broken girl. When Ariana Cole vanished, everyone thought she was finished. But pain has a strange way of becoming power. And in Ariana's silence, a storm was born. The transformation. After escaping that mansion of cruelty, Ariana spent her first months in survival mode, living in a small apartment above a laundromat, eating ramen, washing dishes in diners. But every single day, she wrote her father's name in her notebook, underlined once and whispered, "For you, Dad." She studied by night, worked by day, learned business through free courses and mentorships online. She never used her real name again. To the world, she was Anna Ray, quiet, brilliant, and mysterious. People saw a hard-working woman climbing her way up. No one knew she was plotting the slow death of the empire that once enslaved her. The first move. By her mid-20s, Ariana had developed a reputation in the world of investment startups. She built a discreet financial firm, Ravencrest Holdings, focusing on buying struggling companies and turning them profitable. Her method was simple: find what others ignored, fix it, then own it. Her specialty, real estate, the same business her father had mastered. Within 2 years, she had quietly purchased several small subsidiaries that once belonged to Cole Legacy Group, all under her anonymous firm's name. Piece by piece, she was buying her father's empire back. And Vivian had no idea. Meanwhile, at Cole Legacy Group, Vivian Crosscole was now Madam CEO, chairwoman of one of Chicago's most powerful real estate conglomerates. She was admired for her business brilliance, but those close to her knew she ruled by fear. Her son Ethan had become her right-hand man, spoiled by wealth, addicted to luxury and completely reckless. He ran through company money like it was pocket change, cars, women, gambling, anything that fed his ego. But every time Ethan messed up, Vivian covered for him, because in her mind they were untouchable. Or so she thought. The invitation. One evening, Vivian received an elegant black envelope on her desk. Inside, an invitation. Ravencrest Holdings cordially invites you to a private investment summit. We believe in building legacies, not destroying them. Vivian smirked. How poetic, she said, tossing it aside. But Ethan noticed something strange. Mom, the logo, that's Cole Legacy's old crest. Vivian frowned. He was right. The Ravencrest logo, a raven perched on a golden key, looked eerily similar to the old Cole family emblem. She felt something cold crawl up her spine. The summit. 2 weeks later, Vivian and Ethan attended the Ravencrest Summit in downtown Chicago, a glamorous event full of elite investors and powerful CEOs. As they entered the grand ballroom, cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and soft jazz played in the background. Then a voice echoed from the stage. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a night of new beginnings. Vivian froze. That voice. She turned toward the stage, and there she was. Ariana. Alive, glowing, powerful. Dressed in a tailored black gown, hair sleek, posture regal, every inch the woman her father had once hoped she become. Ariana smiled warmly at the crowd. Some of you may remember me, she said calmly, and some may not, but tonight you'll remember my company. Vivian's glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. The confrontation. Later that night, as guests mingled, Vivian stormed toward Ariana. What are you doing here? She hissed. You should be thanking me, Ariana said softly. You gave me the reason to rise. Don't play games with me, girl. You disappeared for a reason. Ariana tilted her head, her voice calm and cutting. Yes, I disappeared to learn, to build, to understand how monsters like you survive. Vivian's smile faltered. You have no idea what you're doing, Ariana. The business world isn't for little girls playing revenge. Ariana leaned close and whispered, Oh, it's not revenge, Vivian, it's restoration. You took my father's name, his company, his life. I'm just taking them back. Then she walked away, leaving Vivian trembling for the first time in her life. The cracks begin. Over the next 6 months, strange things began happening within Cole Legacy Group. Investors pulled out unexpectedly. Properties were bought by unknown competitors. 2 of their biggest projects collapsed due to legal disputes, all triggered by quiet, strategic acquisitions from Ravencrest Holdings. Vivian panicked, firing board members, blaming accountants, even her son. But Ethan was too busy spiraling into chaos, gambling debts, scandalous headlines, and secret affairs that threatened the family image. Behind the scenes, Ariana was pulling every string through proxies, anonymous emails, and silent partnerships. Her plan wasn't to destroy them overnight. It was to make them watch everything crumble slowly, the same way they made her watch her father die. The truth about the past. During her years away, Ariana had hired a private investigator, Miles Turner, a former detective who specialized in cold cases. Together, they had uncovered the truth her father's death certificate hid. The night Richard died, Vivian had tampered with his medication. But she wasn't alone. She had used Ethan to deliver the final dose, under the guise of helping his father take his pills. Ethan had no idea what he was doing. He thought he was helping. Vivian did the rest. And Ariana now had proof, hidden medical records, financial transfers, and a voice memo Vivian accidentally left on her old phone. He's gone, finally. I'll handle the paperwork tomorrow. That one recording was enough to destroy everything. But Ariana wasn't ready to use it yet. Not until the perfect moment. The weak link. Ethan was always the weakest link, and Ariana knew it. She contacted him anonymously through an encrypted email, pretending to be an investor interested in his secret business ideas. Flattered and greedy, Ethan agreed to meet her representative. At the meeting, Ariana's associate offered him a deal, a fake offshore investment promising millions. Ethan jumped in, signing forged contracts that implicated Cole Legacy Group in fraudulent transactions. When the IRS came knocking weeks later, Vivian was furious. Her empire was suddenly under investigation. Ethan tried to fix it, but the more he tried, the deeper he sank. And Ariana watched from her office, silent, calm, sipping her coffee. Every move of her revenge was unfolding perfectly. The emotional battle. But revenge isn't as simple as satisfaction. Late at night, Ariana would sometimes sit by her window, looking out at the Chicago skyline, and whisper to herself, "Dad, would you still be proud of me?" Because inside, part of her was still that little girl who just wanted her father back. The anger gave her purpose, but the grief gave her heart. Still, she couldn't stop. Not yet. She promised herself she wouldn't rest until Vivian felt the same loneliness and pain she once did. The fall of Ethan. A few months later, Ethan hit rock bottom. Caught in a scandal involving stolen company funds, he faced public disgrace. When Vivian refused to take the blame, Ethan finally snapped. "You always said we'd be untouchable, Mom. You made me your puppet." "You were too weak to stand on your own," she spat. Their shouting match was caught on a leaked security recording, and the media devoured it. Headlines read, "Cole Legacy in Crisis, Family Empire Implodes Amid Financial Fraud." Vivian's reputation was burning. And Ariana smiled. The meeting with the lawyer. One evening, Ariana visited her father's old lawyer, Mr. Donovan. He was older now, grey-haired, regretful. "Ariana, I owe you an apology," he said. "Back then I knew something wasn't right, but Vivian had me under legal pressure. I couldn't risk my firm." Ariana handed him a file, evidence of Vivian's embezzlement, the doctored will, and the poison records. "I don't want revenge," she said quietly. "I want justice." Mr. Donovan looked at her in awe. "You've grown into your father's spirit," he said softly. Ariana smiled sadly. "Then it's time I finish what he started." Vivian's desperation. Vivian's once perfect empire was crumbling. Her son hated her, her investors abandoned her. Her fortune was being devoured by lawsuits and frozen assets. And yet, she still didn't know the enemy was her stepdaughter. One night she sat alone in her mansion, the same mansion Ariana once scrubbed floors in. The silence was heavy, the shadows deep. Her phone buzzed. A message appeared. "Do you remember what he said before he died?" Vivian's breath caught. Another message came through, a voice memo. Richard's weak voice whispered, "Vivian, what did you?" Then static. Her hand trembled. She looked up, and across the street through the window she saw her. Ariana, standing in the shadows watching. Vivian screamed. But when she looked again, the window was empty. The fire within. Ariana knew it was almost time. But the final strike had to be clean, not emotional, not chaotic, but poetic. Vivian destroyed her father for wealth. So Ariana would destroy her through that wealth. When a person loses everything, they either crumble, or they rise above the ashes and become the fire itself. And tonight, Ariana Cole was the fire. For years, she'd lived for this moment, to watch the woman who murdered her father face the truth she could never hide from again. The setup. Vivian's company was collapsing fast. Her lawyers were quitting, the press was tearing her apart, and her son Ethan had been arrested for financial crimes he didn't even understand. But the worst blow came from the board meeting she didn't see coming. That morning, she was summoned to an emergency shareholder conference. She arrived in her expensive car, wearing her best diamond earrings, still trying to look like a queen even as her empire burned. When she walked into the room, the board members avoided her eyes. Her chair had been moved, placed far from the head of the table. And sitting at that head seat was Ariana. Vivian froze. Her heart skipped. Ariana looked up calmly. "Good morning, Mrs. Cole." "What is this?" Vivian hissed. "Who allowed you?" "I did," Ariana said, "as the new majority shareholder of Cole Legacy Group." Vivian blinked in disbelief. "You're lying." Ariana slid a file across the table. "Every subsidiary, every offshore holding, every property you sold to cover your debts, I bought them, through Ravencrest Holdings." The board members nodded silently. Ariana leaned back, voice steady as steel. "You thought you buried me, Vivian, but all you did was plant me deeper, and now I've grown back over everything you built." Vivian's collapse. Vivian's breath came in short bursts. "You can't do this, I'll sue you." "For what?" Ariana asked softly. "For reclaiming my father's legacy." Her voice lowered to a whisper. "You stole his company, you poisoned him, you lied to everyone." The room went silent. Vivian's eyes widened. "You have no proof." Ariana opened a small device and pressed play. "He's gone, finally. I'll handle the paperwork tomorrow." Vivian's own voice filled the room. The same voice memo she'd recorded years ago, unaware that it would someday destroy her. Every face in the room turned toward her, shock, disgust, and horror. Ariana stood. "That's the real Vivian Crossgoal, the woman who murdered my father for his fortune." Vivian tried to speak, but words failed her. Her body trembled. She grabbed her purse and stumbled out of the room. The arrest. That evening, the news exploded. Headlines everywhere. CEO Vivian Crossgoal under investigation for murder and fraud. Secret recording exposes shocking truth behind Cole Empire. FBI cars surrounded her mansion. Neighbors watched as she was led out in handcuffs, mascara streaked down her face, shouting Ariana's name in fury. Ethan was already in custody, facing decades in prison for the financial crimes he'd signed under Ariana's fake contracts. He screamed that his mother had ruined his life. She screamed that Ariana had set them up. And for once, both were right. The final confrontation. Weeks later, Ariana visited the detention center. Vivian sat behind the glass, pale, thinner, and defeated. When she saw Ariana walk in, her eyes filled with hate and something else, fear. "You got what you wanted," Vivian rasped. "Are you happy now?" Ariana sat down slowly, folding her hands. "Happy? No, I don't think I'll ever be happy again, but I am at peace." Vivian scoffed. "You destroyed your own family name." Ariana's gaze didn't waver. "You destroyed my father's heart. I only destroyed your illusion." For a long moment, they stared at each other, two women bound by the same bloodline of hate, but standing on opposite sides of justice. Vivian finally whispered, "You think this will bring him back?" Ariana's voice softened. "No, but it will stop you from hurting anyone else." She stood to leave, paused at the door, and turned one last time. "My father used to say, a man's empire is only as strong as the love behind it. You built yours on greed, I rebuilt his with truth." And then she walked away. Ethan's fate. Ethan's trial was swift. He pled guilty to multiple counts of fraud and conspiracy. Before sentencing, he tried to write Ariana a letter, apologizing, saying he never knew the truth about his father's death. Ariana never replied, but she arranged for part of her foundation's funds to go toward rehabilitation programs for young offenders, anonymously. Because revenge had done its job. Justice had been served. There was no more need for hate. The restoration. Months later, Ariana stood in her father's old office, now hers. The sun poured through the glass windows. The air smelled of cedar and new beginnings. She hung her father's portrait back on the wall, the one Vivian had removed years ago. For a long time, she just looked at it. "Dad," she whispered, "I did it. I brought everything home." She opened her desk drawer and placed a small silver key inside, the same one that used to unlock Richard's personal journal. It was her symbol of closure. Outside the office, employees whispered in respect when she passed. No longer the broken girl. Now, the woman who rebuilt her family's name from ashes. The legacy lives on. Under Ariana's leadership, Cole Legacy Group transformed into something new. She focused on charity housing, education programs, and support for orphans, the kind of legacy her father would have wanted. Every news outlet called it a miracle comeback, but those who looked closer knew it wasn't luck. It was vengeance turned into redemption, and Ariana never once mentioned Vivian's name again. To her, the past was buried. Vivian's end. In prison, Vivian's health declined fast. Years of stress, paranoia, and guilt consumed her. One cold morning, she was found collapsed in her cell, clutching an old newspaper clipping of Richard Cole's photo. The guards said her last words were barely a whisper. "Tell her I'm sorry." When Ariana heard the news, she felt no joy. Just silence. The kind of silence that comes after a storm has passed. The letter. Weeks later, a package arrived at Ariana's office from her father's former lawyer, Mr. Donovan. Inside was a sealed envelope addressed in her father's handwriting. Trembling, Ariana opened it. "My dearest Ariana, if you're reading this, it means life took a turn I couldn't prevent. I hope you remember one thing: never let hatred define you. Build, even when others destroy. And when the time comes, forgive not for them, but for yourself. Love always. Dad." A single tear slipped down her cheek. She smiled faintly and looked out at the city skyline. "Forgive," she whispered. "Maybe someday." The redemption. A year later, Ariana launched the Richard Cole Foundation, an organization dedicated to supporting young people who lost parents to violence or greed. At the opening ceremony, she stood before hundreds of guests, her voice calm but strong. "My father taught me that true power isn't in wealth, it's in compassion. This foundation is my promise that no child will ever feel as alone as I once did." The audience erupted in applause. And in that moment, Ariana realized something profound. Her revenge had evolved. It wasn't about destroying her enemies anymore. It was about honoring the man who gave her life and making sure his spirit lived on. The final scene. That night after the ceremony, Ariana drove to the cemetery. She placed white lilies on her father's grave and sat quietly in the moonlight. "Dad," she said softly, "it's over. She's gone, it's all yours again." The wind blew gently through the trees, as if answering her. A faint peace settled in her heart, the kind that comes only after justice and forgiveness finally meet. She stood, brushed the snow from her coat, and smiled. Then, with one last look at the grave, she whispered, "Rest easy, Dad. Your daughter kept the legacy alive." And she walked away, strong, free, and finally whole. Narrator's closing words. Sometimes revenge begins with pain. But the greatest revenge is not in destruction, it's in restoration. Ariana Cole didn't just take back her family's empire. She turned tragedy into triumph. And though she lost everything once, she rebuilt it in her father's name, stronger than ever. Because in the end, the truth always rises. And love, even after death, always wins.